Hello, I apologize. It's taken me so long to get back to you. I have had COVID. I'm a first time, hopefully last time. But be that as it may, I wanted to send you some tips as you're going into these things. I obviously won't be able to meet, but I'll try and send you some greatest hits. But this is how I would approach it, especially when you're doing a literature review. You're trying to catch a lot of the pieces. And so what I have here is keywords. And this is things that we would use to discover where the body of literature is being presented. Is it in criminology? Is it in social policy? Is it in psychology? And I'll show you how to look at all those different things. Sometimes, so when we're looking at this verses, that verses is problematic because if you go out onto the open web, there's comparisons. But if you go into scholarship, oftentimes they don't do that compare and contrast. They just analyze one, the effectiveness of court ordered treatment or the effectiveness of blah, blah, blah. So when we first started, that's my dishwasher, sorry. When we first started, we only found like three. Um, Stop it, dishwasher. So this is how I would proceed. And if we were able to have met, this is how I would go through it. Um, are you familiar with the databases? So we did the library catalog, but the databases, depending on where you want to go, is where a lot of that literature in a literature review is going to be presented. So you could go in by, um, let's see, you could go in by, oh, there's criminology. You could go in by like economics. Economics sometimes, or political science, looks at like the monetary value of these things. You could go into education, psychology, blah, 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 blah. How do you know which database to go into? Because there's so many. I have a list under research guides over here. I think I clicked on that, yeah. The research guides are put together by librarians all over campus. And so you could just type in social work once it loads. Social work. And I have a guide. And I'll put this in the on the notes that I'll send to you. So PhD and master's help is my most complete list. So I'm going to grab this URL and I'll put it over here in notes that I'm going to send to you. Work, not social walk. Social work research guide. When you go into any research whatsoever, you start out, you can go in with steps. The first one is validating keywords and concepts. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to see how are things written about. And you can do that in a variety of places. So we did the library catalog. I'm going to do that one again to show you a couple tricks. But there's also public policy analysis. These are like written for journalists. These are not scholarly. Nexus Uni looks at court cases. We'll look at that one too. And this is like newspapers around the United States. Almost none of these are scholarly, but they're going to help us frame out who's having these conversations and what matters to them. So for some people, it might be that justice is not being done. But I'm guessing that for a lot of people, it's going to be about like, how do we get more people through the court system instead of having it all log jammed? So I'll do the library catalog again. And I have my layers. Let me show you what I'm talking about with the layers. When you go to any search interface, you can go to the advanced search. Oh, let me just go to the library homepage. I'll show you how to get it from there. Sorry, this is taking so long. So advanced catalog search. All the advanced searches in all the databases work similarly, but they're great because you can separate it out into concepts. So you could even look at, is there a population of people who are you like in the juvenile justice system? Are you in, is there a specific prison system or a specific crime or sentencing or so on and so forth? So if you wanted to look at like drug related crimes specifically, you could do that. But you can add new lines as you go. And you can say, well, right now I'm just looking at criminal or justice or court. What that means in the library catalog, out of the probably 70 million things in there, it's going to return everything that has the word criminal in it and everything that has the word justice or court, one of those three. But so it's not all over the place, I'm going to look in. I just want it to be, do we have abstract? Oh, fiddlesticks, we don't have abstract. We'll save that for another database. And I don't know if it's court-ordered or mandatory treatment. So I'll put that in my second line. And I put it in quotes because I want those two keywords to stick together. And then lastly, I'm not going to do voluntary yet. But let's see. Let's do a search. And let's see if something bubbles up to the top. So 537. Ooh. So right there, we have one. As you're starting, think of this literature review as you have, say you have, this brought to you by Sour Patch Candy. Say you have like two cliffs and you wanted to build a bridge between them. One side, you can see the other side. And on this side, you're like, oh, I know that something on the other side is going on, but I don't understand it. And each step that you take has another point. And so don't think you're going to find one article that says everything. So you might be talking about, well, court-ordered treatment is expedited for serious mental illness. That might be one element. And so you don't have to like compare everything in one article, but you're getting these little bits of comparison as you go. So let's see what else we have. Psychopathology. So it looks like, oh, there's drugs, addiction. So you just cruise through these and like, oh, okay, so I'm starting to build up themes. So, what do they call it? Psychopathology. Okay. Mental illness, addiction. Looks like it's a lot of addiction, expedited diversion. Have you ever heard of diversion? Diversion is like before you, it's like a plea deal where you don't go to court if you agree to go to therapy. There's adolescence, mental capacity. Oh, it's interesting. Another thing you can do is you can look at all of the subjects written on something compiled in this list over here. So out of those 500, what keywords did they use? Well, let's see. There's mandatory treatment as a subject, but there's also like medicine, psychiatry, there's gender, psychology, substance abuse, addiction or substance abuse, mental health, substance abuse, treatments, drug addiction, drug abuse, substance related. So I'm seeing a big trend in mental illness or drug courts. That's interesting. All of a sudden I built two parts of that bridge across the way. Now let's go back. So I could go and grab any one of those ideas. Oh, fiddlesticks. Now I want to go back and let's look at voluntary. So that was court ordered. Here's the reason that court ordered is good, but we want to find out what is it when it's not court ordered, but it's voluntary. And something that happened here is we have treatment. So we have voluntary. So let's do voluntary and add a new line. And I have to spell voluntary correctly. This is the first time I've typed in like a week. $1,800. whoa, all of a sudden there's like a whole different kettle of fish here. There's like euthanasia, legalization, there's a lot. Mental health again, criminal justice, mentally ill. Look at that, the criminal justice voluntary sector, concepts and agenda for an emerging field. So you can start, you could build trends and ideas, and as you go, fill in and you take notes as you go. So that's looking for keywords. You can also look in keywords in newspapers and court cases. Nexus Uni is court cases. Normally I wouldn't show people this because this is kind of a frustrating database to get into, but you might find people who are talking about this in law debates and things like that. Do I sound nasally? The COVID, it was like a horrible cold that lasted forever and the fever never stopped. But now I'm like, my sinus is just completely inflamed. In this one, you can go, there's an advanced search too, but you can search through cases, law reviews, company info, and you can also do an advanced search on this one too. There's the advanced search. Their interface is not the greatest. But the content is incredibly valuable. So let's try. Let's try the voluntary one again. Voluntary and treatment or intervention. And on this one, you can say news, company, financial. Let's look at legal. Oh, it killed my keywords. You darn LexisNexis. Well, you get the idea. I won't torture you by showing you that whole search again. But this one, it's great to go into the news and the legal definition. And you can start to pour through all the documents, looking at the keywords on the side and seeing how do they describe this. Once you've gotten a good set of keywords, you can go into discipline-specific research. This is where you'll find those scholarly articles that you use in your literature review. You can do that same advanced search in all these. These are the ones that I recommend. So sociology is fantastic because they're looking at societies around the world and how they're dealing with problems in society. So it could be mental illness, it could be their criminal justice system, all sorts of different things. But they're analyzing it critically and they're saying, well, this worked and this didn't. And so those are values that you can use. This one's pretty good. This one has criminology in it. It's hit or miss. If you get frustrated with this one, then it's definitely a miss. These two are okay. Maybe systematically go through each one of these. PsycInfo is going to have measurements in psychology. Whoops, I don't want to look up the definition of PsycInfo. I want to go into the database. This one is going to come at it from the approach of a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So instead of looking at society, they're looking at the effectiveness of something. So there's our context. Let's try. Let's see what voluntary does. I'll follow through on this search. This is what I wanted to show you before. When you get into these scholarly databases, they might even suggest something. Look at that. Treatment or intervention or therapy. They added a keyword for us. You never know. Somebody's going to send you something. Did they add anything? Okay. On these, we might get too much stuff, or we might get too little. One thing you can do is narrow down to just the abstract. So I'm not searching in the full text or the title or the authors or anything like that. I just want it to be in the abstract, which is that paragraph description of what's important in the article. So if this shows up in the abstract of the articles, it should be right on target with what we're interested in. And still there's 317. Oh, but look at this. There's dissertations and theses. How do we get around those? We can go to academic journals right here on the side. Dissertations and theses are not considered something that you would use in your lit review unless it was like the perfect thing. So I would avoid those unless your instructor says. Look at that. Diversion outcomes. Psychiatric court reports and diversion outcomes in a remand prison over 3 years. And they have voluntary in the abstract. Ding, 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 ding. Now, let's see. When was this published? I don't see a date on this one. That's disconcerting. So now we can start being choosy. Oh, 2021. Let's see what the abstract says. Yeah, courts. Ooh, healthcare settings. Okay. So part of it can be about partners. So we have psychiatric hospital as a partner. We have the court system. And each one of those moments, oh, this is fascinating. There's a new aspect. Oh, there's, whoa, addiction treatment. So another thing we can do is you can come up on the dates. When we're being responsible, unless it's something that's like really, really big deal, we want to narrow it down to like the last 10 years, 5 years. It depends on the rigor of your instructor and how far or close they want to be. A good rule of thumb is 2007 is when smartphones started and the accountability was a lot easier. So that narrows it down to 46. And you can go through. Is every article in your lit review going to be independent of the other one and just give a little footstep? Or are you going to have duplicates? Be careful of using duplicates unless you really want to hammer that point home. Some of these don't look relevant though, so don't worry about that. The keywords are not perfect. It just gets you in the ballpark. Oh, look at that. Coercion into addiction treatment. I didn't think about that. So it's not mandatory, but we're really going to lean on you? Oh, by the way, let's go into this one. Most of these databases have a citation generator. If you don't use a citation manager, which I think you should, I recommend Zotero, which I'm happy to show you. But if you go to YouTube and type in basics of Zotero, it'll show you how to use it. It's really easy. But you would get full text this way. If you can't get full text for anything, just let me know. Okay. Let's go back. Let's go back to this social work guide. Okay, the discipline-specific research. The bigger the title is sized, the more important I thought it was, but you can cruise through these as you see fit. PAIS is amazing because that's political policy, where they're measuring, is this worth it to our society? Does the cost outweigh the benefits? So that would be really good. Medline, also good. That's the medical aspect. CINAHL, really good. So this PsycInfo and Medline have a lot of overlap. Moving forward, this is the last thing that I want to show you, is Scopus and Web of Science do something called impact measurement. If you have too much stuff and you want to know what the most important things are, here's how you find it. So if you go on to Spotify or YouTube or any number of different websites that talk about like the most popular video, the most popular movie, the most popular song of the week, they do it by the number of times that something has been purchased, licensed, or viewed, right? In scholarship, they look at the number of times that something has been cited. And that's how they determine whether something is the most important article or not. This is something that's kind of new in our current century. They didn't used to have this before, and this has been responsible for a lot of research taking off. Web of Science does this one as well. So I'm going to add a search field. Okay, criminal justice or court. Court-ordered treatment or mandatory treatment. I wonder if we should do, I wonder if we should just do court-ordered and then it could be treatment or intervention or therapy. I mean, you can mess around with this. But let's go into the abstract again. Make sure these are just in the abstract. If you really wanted to narrow it down, you'd go in title only. So sometimes that happens. But with all these keywords, it might not be great. Okay, what's the most important articles ever written on these topics in the last 20 years? I should say this isn't all time. This is just the last 20 years. There's 783 across all the disciplines. I'm going to move my head. Whoops. So you can see these are by order. So there's an intervention for drug-using adolescents in Taiwan. And these are brand new. But if we go up here and we sort by number of times cited, we can see the articles that made the biggest difference. So this is a review from 1998 that has the keywords in that we put in, but it's so important that these 465 articles couldn't exist without it. There's another one. Involuntary outpatient commitment reduce hospital recidivism. This one was randomized control trial. That's big. You should use this one. But it was so important that these 300 articles couldn't exist without it. Does that make sense? If this one looks really good to you, but it's like way out of date, you can go and see the things that cited it by clicking on those. My mouse is tired after 7 days of cruising through YouTube and Disney Plus. You can see the results of everything that has cited that article, and you can sort those by the number of times cited. Compulsory. Look at that. Impact of mental illness, stigma, and seeking and participating in mental health care. All of a sudden, we're getting outside of the criminal justice system, and we're talking about like the impact of mental illness all by itself. That is really, really amazing because it fits in. Like if somebody's mentally ill, what do we do in the court system? Do we recognize that or do we ignore it? That's something being debated these days. We see if somebody's mentally fit. There's a trial going on in Utah right now where they've determined somebody mentally fit to stand trial. Let me go back to that original results list of that search that I did. And you can do search after search after search, obviously. But what things, if it's like 10 years old, even if it is like this seminal article, I want to like, well, what's happened in the last few years? You can again narrow down to the last 5. Is it working? Hey, it did it. And then you can see those by number of times cited. So if you want to see, I mean, I love the American Journal of Psychiatry, but you know, what's happened? Ooh, all of a sudden we have like HIV care, psychiatric beds. Ooh, state level policy, mandated treatment, impact. So you get the idea. This is a starting point, so let me know how it goes. And if you can't find anything, but you have a citation for it, email me if you're unfamiliar with interlibrary loan, and I can show you how to get that. And I can try and track stuff down for you too.